So this push to make sorry, we're back. Metaphysics or Rantcast and Metaphysician 7. So okay, so now being back in Ottawa, being in the 613, being in the local scenario, realizing that in order to really bring oneself out of one's comfort zone, especially in this DJ scenario, getting out of the comfort zone of being in the background in the studio and never really having to interact with people, I then start to pursue interviews. I then start to pursue assisting in other shows. I then start to kind of contact and quote unquote network more. Putting yourself out there, putting out flyers. You know what I mean? I even had this one, it was this weird scenario where it wasn't weird. I put a bunch of flyers out. And this is the irony too. For all of my talk here about the social media and tech and blah, 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 I'm still somebody who at the time I was using flyers as a way to promote myself. You know what I mean? So this goes to show you that in theory what to do. Is the practicality thing that it might not line up sometimes depending on your paradigm that you're attaching to yourself to. You're handcuffing yourself to. So the pursuing of putting oneself out there, because I realized that this is a narrative that we create in fucking society. It's like society pushes this introvert versus extrovert narrative, and it was healthy. I mean, who am I? I can't really see. I'm making this about introverts versus extroverts, but really it's about getting out of your comfort zone. It was healthy for me at that particular time, moving back into town, moving into a city that I hadn't lived in for basically 8 years, to then really kind of pursue the conventional sort of club DJing, event DJing, bar DJing, networking, quote unquote, schmoozing or whatever. What is it? Schmooze and something or other. Anyway, going to events and putting oneself out there, blah, blah, blah. Now, but then there's a lot of I think there's something to be said for when one is in a small town. I said small. New Brunswick was definitely a small town, but here was a city. But it's not even it's a top 4 city in Canada, but it's not a top 4 city in North America. That's for sure. It's like okay. So for the Americans, the 613 population-wise, even though culturally and maybe the role that Ottawa plays is one of a DC, like literally is a capital, the actual, from a population standpoint, it's comparable to Rochester, New York. You know what I'm saying? It's like Rochester, what's another? I'm trying to think. I know this. This is something I know. This is like some useless trivia that I know. It's more like an Oakland. It's in that kind of 1 million to 2 million tier. It's like an Oakland. It's like a San Jose. It's like what's another one? A Providence, Rhode Island. It's like a Cleveland, Ohio. It's like a Syracuse, New York. It's what's another one? I'm trying to think of, just to give you, like Birmingham, Alabama is another one. You know what I'm saying? Maybe even like New Orleans. It's like one of those, like that's the kind of population range that it's in. So it ain't really, so it's big enough that you can get lost in some sort of crowd, but it's not big enough that you'll never see people again, right? And so there's already basically mid-sized fish in a mid-sized pond competing for rep, competing for a slot in the position of the nightlife scene or the social scene. So there's heavily established cliques of sorts. There's like there's 2-decade-old cliques. There's newer cliques that are suiting the niche or whatever. Like I think the year that I was starting to get back into the show, there was this, and if I'm repeating myself, whatever. And by repeating myself, I mean if I've spoken about this weeks ago or months ago, whatever. But when I came back, the sound that was in at the time was kind of that it was like that 2012, 2013 boiler room kind of era of like RL Grime. Tonight was huge at the time, where they had just blown up. Salva, various other trap. Flostradamus was big at the time. There were other like kind of like trap influenced sounds that were kind of dominating at the time. Who else was there? You know, it's interesting. I'm gonna take a side. I'm gonna get back into the overarching theme of introvert DJing and extrovert DJing. But it's interesting, these little waves of people. Like, I was just thinking, well, not just thinking. The other week I was thinking about how Justice and Chromeo and Mastercraft were like dominating in the late 2000s. Like, I totally forgot about them. And something happened. I think on Twitter, I think Mastercraft is like doof. Because remember that electro phase that was happening for a while there too. That big room electro. Kind of like pre-big EDM thing. You know what I mean? Sorry, I'm going to hop back in. Hold up. And yeah, just a little disclaimer. This is going to be all over the place because some other thoughts are jumping in here into my thought process regarding this whole thing about introvert DJing, extrovert DJing, and the confidence building part of it. Let me backtrack to 2007 or even like 2008-9. I think that around this time wasn't podcasting like on the come up. So you're caught in this old paradigm of community radio, which is, it has its, I mean, FM radio is a bit less capitalistic than, say, legacy, like big quote unquote mainstream legacy media with lots of money backing it. It's a community thing, so you have to be mindful of that. And you can overlap a podcast with the FM radio, community radio, college radio thing. But I think in terms of, if you flip it the argument towards confidence building and taking a bet on oneself, it's very easy to say that, okay, well, I'm gonna put all this effort into producing a demo for an FM radio show, and then if the FM radio thing doesn't work out, then therefore it's not on me, right? You know, because then you can come up with any number of excuses as to why you didn't do it. And that's what happened. Like, I managed to get through in the second station that I was at. I managed to get through, but other people didn't get through either. You know what I mean? Other people didn't get through, and then I'm sure it was easy for them, because I tried to follow them up after. I tried to look them up after there wasn't much going on. So therefore, it was easy to just say, oh, well, I tried to get a show on the radio, and then therefore it didn't happen. And because it didn't happen, that's, you know, not on me. But I mean, podcasts were on the go in 2012, right? They're still going, obviously. I'm just saying that initial wave is you can trace it back years, decades. Not decades, a decade. And there was, you know, I was listening to people's podcasts, you know. I was listening to people doing interviews on Google Hangouts. I mean, that whole ecosystem was already in full swing. So it kind of speaks to what must have been a lack of self-confidence to actually entrust another conventional legacy system to act as sort of a gatekeeper as to your as talent. It's like, oh, well, if I get through, I'm talented. Then it's like, you're talented already, or whatever. I'm not saying talent. I'm just saying that's kind of the thinking you have to have when it comes to whenever somebody publishes their own podcast on here. It's like, there's a lot of confidence that goes into that, you know, and that's more important. You know what I mean? Like, taking a bet on oneself, taking the risk, taking the chance to say, you know what, I'm going to record something, put it out there, and then let people decide whether they want to listen or not. And then it's on me to promote it. Like I was saying, in the very first radio station, I didn't do much promotion. I don't think many of the other. Now it was a smaller community, a smaller ecosystem there, so there was already kind of a built-in audience in the town that didn't really need much promoting because, I mean, there was no other game in town, right? but in a more digital community with all of the quote unquote saturation or whatever you want to call it. You have to be a bit more on your grind to kind of not just publish, because it's a motivational. I mean, I say motivation. This is the other side of the argument. All that shit I just said here. When you're forced to be on a schedule, an FM radio schedule, where you have to be on at X number of, on X time every week, people expect to listen. People expect a show. It's a time slot that's either been long running or you're building up, and so on and so forth. And there's rules and so on. It forces you to actually take it more seriously. Whereas you can just start a podcast and then eventually fall off and say, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? So there's two sides to everything. There's a balance to everything. There's two sides to everything, right? Repeating myself. But I think you have to look at it. You have to find the best of both worlds. You have to be a bit more self-disciplined when it comes to creating your own schedule and routine and then sticking to it. Anyway, I'm gonna back trail in the conversation to, the whole putting oneself out there and, forcing yourself to cold email and cold contact people in order to get gigs or in order to get some kind of interview, which there's plenty of people doing, right? Like, go through iTunes, you're going to see any number of interviews. In fact, I think it's never been easier to get an interview with somebody in order to fill content, in order to fill slots, because A, everybody wants to tell their story, and B, there's a lack of, in a digital space, you don't really, it's like walking up to somebody and asking for an interview. It's like Tinder dating versus, it's like Tinder, Plenty of Fish, or Bumble dating versus, rolling up to somebody on the street. You know what I mean? There's a lot of like superheroes on Tinder, but then it's like, okay, what about the old school conventional, like, walk up to somebody in public thing? That happens less. And, people are in their, anyway, I'm going to, it's a tangent, but focusing on the how do you get gigs? It's like I had no choice but to cold email people. Email is a bit less. Email, you can kind of have the best of both. I'm taking an action to contact somebody, but I'm not in their face, kind of a thing. And then if they respond, they respond. If they don't, they don't. So it's a bit more passive in that way. But that was often that was a move. And then you follow up with the meetings and so on. But then, okay, so then let's say you do in fact get gigs, or let's say you do network with people, and then you're collaborating. It's like you have to factor in other opinions. You have to, and especially in the when you're not putting on your own event, and you're doing like more of a residency thing. It's like, all right, what's the crowd? What is the built-in audience? What is it that the management wants? What does the bar manager want? What does the venue owner want? And this depends too, like, depending on your market, there could be any number of venues which allow you to do your thing specifically. And I think this is the bit of the how to maintain the, yes, you are an introvert, yes, you're maybe in your own zone. You want to be able to play your own kind of music. You know what I mean? That was another challenge. It was like in a bigger club scenario, you're being bombarded with either requests or people rolling up on you, people invading your quote-unquote space, depending on how the DJ booth is set up. And you might not be comfortable with that. You might not at all be comfortable with that. You know what I mean? But then in a smaller, more intimate setting, like an art cafe or the gallery or whatever, a smaller bar. In fact, I'm gonna pick this up again. I gotta go, but I'm gonna pick this up with how the very first public DJing event went, and how, the level of comfort that I had in that, and whether that was a push towards more extroverted behavior or introverted behavior. Anyway, I'm now back in. Peace. Test. So yeah, we're back. Discussing this public DJing thing. I'll admit I'm not really interested in talking about this anymore. An entire day has gone by. See, this is the one problem with this format that I have with the recording is that I just like where you heard me say I gotta go. Literally, that was like almost 24. It was almost 24 hours ago. So it's like I've kind of lost interest in the original. The fire has kind of died down as far as this topic goes. Although I was also recording a video of sorts about it. Anyway, but other things happened today that I wanted to talk about. So I'm just gonna kind of play out the rest of this episode. I'm sorry, but so yeah, the first event and it might have almost been the perfect first event. I think for those who they feel like they need to. First of all, maybe it's a role in your head that you're trying to fill. Maybe you don't really like the public part of DJing. You like the idea of DJing. You think it's necessary because that's the conventional kind of sort of path or trajectory that people take. But also keep in mind you can just live stream on whether it's Facebook or whether it's Twitch, and you can, if your goal is to build a following, which presumably it is, that can be your angle, and then eventually you can find, depending on who ends up being in the audience, who ends up being one of your listeners, maybe they reach out or you reach out to somebody and kind of there's this one particular Facebook group that I'm in. It's the Lo-Fi House Facebook group, and you often see these kinds of things happening, like people sharing which gigs are where, or exchanging gigs and so on. Anyway, so if you're somebody who you feel like you need to be DJing because that's conventionally what is done in public, in an event, in the DJing in the bar scenario, or maybe you're just there's different. Everybody has their different motives, right? But I'm specifically talking about people who feel like you have to make some kind of quote unquote progression from the studio to the outside world, which is good. It's a good exercise, at least for confidence. Now, your first event, your first event isn't going to be, you're not going to be on some stadium shit. You're not going to be like at Madison Square Garden from the jump, from 21 Jump Street. However, if you can, it's up to you to book it, right? Maybe you got a crew. I did it solo. Eventually there was a crew of sorts, but in the beginning it was just, and also it's interesting too, the confidence building thing. Be alert to the fact that maybe this isn't just for DJing, this is in other endeavors of whatever kind. Sometimes you'll be the one at the fire, and then the people around you may have talents as well, but they don't really want to take a bet on themselves. In a way. Or maybe they have in the past and they don't feel the point of doing it anymore. But then you become, you may be it's like you're the one who's like trying to make this jump from the studio to the real world, so to speak. And then they kind of feed off of that energy. And so maybe in the beginning you might feel like you're doing a lot of things on your own. And there's the people that end up, maybe the people in your circle are more like spectators. So be prepared for that. So you're going to be doing a lot of like quote unquote legwork, contacting people, finding venues. All of that is a good exercise to get out of your own head and make something happen. And it becomes addictive too, right? Like the cold emailing thing, even if you're not necessarily naturally comfortable with it. Hold on, I'm not trying to burn my depending on how you look at it, dinner/breakfast, because it's 12:48 a.m. now. You might not. What was I saying? Yeah, it's a good exercise because it becomes addictive. The cold emailing, the chances, knowing that the chances are you're not going to get a response. These are all good things for the mind. These are all good things for the person, because it's the same thing. It's like as much as I clown. I don't know how long ago this was, but I was clowning call center realities. I was clowning the concept of telemarketing, and as a. And I'm not going to get into I'm not going to get into that specifically. All I'm saying is telemarketing is good at least for the very reason that you are forced into this scenario where you have to contact people and you're probably going to get shut down. Your quote unquote conversion rate, if you want to call it that, is going to be what? You know, you can make 100 calls, you might get 4 or 5. Some people got higher conversion rates because some people are very like persuasive on the phone. Some people really were like, you know, I don't know. Some people were really trying to be the call center all-stars. Those are very few. But for the most part, it's a good exercise to understand the philosophy of you're going to be contacting people. You're going to be asking them a question. You're going to be asking them for something. You're going to try and negotiate with them. It probably won't go down. Then you go on to the next. And you just keep doing that forever. For hours and hours and hours a day. That is sort of... That's one of the benefits of this kind of the cold email, the cold DM even. I've been on a bit of a stretch like that too. You know, and this is the thing too. Things, it's all spam, right? Like I mean, if you take it to the most extreme definition, it's spam, right? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm pretty positive that let's say your thing is mostly you say fuck the cold email or fuck the cold call. I'm just gonna do DMs. I'm pretty sure that I think Twitter might even be the most, like, you can't really just go into DM spree on Twitter or IG and then expect like not to be flagged in some way. I just read you not just read you, but in a few episodes ago, I read you the how Twitter tweets suspicious accounts, so you gotta be careful, right? And I think IG already from the jump, like, you post too much on IG, you're getting shadow banned or whatever they call that, shadow blacklist. Hold on a second. Okay, yeah. So you're getting, if you post too much on IG, if you one day I test, this is way back. This is like, well, way back. This is like November or something. I'm like, I wonder how much I can post here to see what happens. So I just posted pictures. It was just like, I had a bunch of, like, a backlog of Urbex pictures, and I was trying to populate this IG page. Not really knowing what I was going to do with the IG page. This whole Rantcast thing was not even an idea. And so I just started to post, and I'm like, I wonder how many of these I can post and see what happens. I post. Then I noticed it started to pick up momentum. Like, you get all these likes. And you're like, okay, this is interesting. It keeps going. And then the next, like, there was like one post that got like hundreds of likes, and then the next post didn't get anything. And I'm like, this must be shadow ban. Anyway, I'm going to pick this up in another rant because I didn't realize I just ran out of bars. Peace.